All right, let's kick off this community call. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. As you're probably aware, this is our second attempt at running a call this week. Unfortunately, first time round, we ran into some last minute scheduling issues with our guest, but we'll have them on at a future date. So, yeah, thanks for again tuning in. This is usually around the time that we have our weekly chit chat, which is in the Discord. Towards the end of this call, people are wanting to chat about some non-rocket pool related topics. We may end up pausing this space and heading over there, but probably a good idea, a good opportunity for Jasper and I to chat about some DeFi integration news. There's certainly a lot of things going on. If you've been paying attention, one thing that is becoming quite popular is stable coins collateralized by liquid staking tokens, or being able to use liquid staking tokens like rETH um, to borrow stables or other assets. It seems every couple of days there's some new protocol reaching out to me to discuss this topic. And there's a few over the past week or so who have kind of announced rETH support, plus some others who I know are kind of working behind the scenes to enable that. So maybe actually that is a good place to start. Um,
Yeah, I've I've really kind of lost count at this point. How many of these both Rye and Liquidy forks have sort of arisen? I think those are the two major flavor of stablecoins that are coming out of this LS DeFi season, it's so to speak. Um, the major difference between the two in being that Rye originally was a immutable ETH only stablecoin that wasn't very stable and floated, and Liquidity USD being much more stable, but having its own restrictions on supply. With the introduction of the staked ETH interest rate, both of these systems seem to perform much better, and so we've had just a huge rush of these different kinds of forks based around staked ETH assets. In the case of the Rye forks, I think the most interesting one to me is High. This is not financial advice. I don't think High is even live yet, but High is being led by Amin Soul, who, in my eyes, was one of the major figureheads behind the original Reflexer movement. Uh, so High is being proposed on Optimism Network with starting collateral of Rhapsody, but with a suggested initial expansion, including rETH, the Optimism token, and a couple others. So that's definitely one to look out for. Rye had this problem because of the nature of how redemptions work. The price would essentially just drift away from where it started. Uh, Vitalik Buterin famously shorted Rye when soon after it launched at its $3.14 valuation, expecting it to drift down all the way to parity with USD, which eventually it did do. So that's just one of the many flavors. Uh, Liquidy has had itself a ton of forks. The community driven the one that has originated closest to our own community has been Gravita. Uh, Gravita is, again, a Liquidy based fork, but it does have some alterations, mainly towards the fee design, that sort of set it apart and take advantage of the inherent benefits you get from using a staked asset. Gravita also has added different assets beyond rETH, including uh, the Bean version of, it's escaping me now, but it is a pretty interesting yield-bearing stablecoin that not many other lending protocols support. So the inclusion of both rETH, Steth, and this uh, tertiary yield source have made Gravita TVL grow fairly rapidly. So, what are your thoughts on this just deluge of different flavors of decentralized stablecoins?
I do have to agree with you that it is pretty hard to keep up with everything. Uh, I'm not sure how I feel about the term LSDFi. I mean, I guess we can get away with it with the D standing for decentralization, but then it kind of clashes.
Exactly.
But then it kind of clashes a bit with LST. Regardless, it does feel like perhaps we are setting the stage for a kind of wave of DeFi growth backed by liquid staking tokens, including rETH. There are a couple of um, examples that I saw recently, one being Raft, and there's a governance proposal out, it seems, to um, add rETH as collateral in what they're doing. I think right now they only accept one liquid staking token, so good to see that kind of effort to diversify. And there's another one called maybe Lucid, I believe. Um, Certainly a large number, and I suppose as you mentioned earlier, Jasper, we really just have to encourage everyone to do their research when it comes to these protocols. There are a lot of them. Some of the differences between them might be a bit subtle, and I suppose you do have to question in the long term how many different flavors of this stable coin we need, are going to survive. So yeah, it's great to see the innovation, but yeah, be careful out there.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we're approaching this fracturing liquidity point where we have an excess of competition now in the space, but no clear outright winner. So hopefully we get some consolidation, and hopefully it's a consolidation around the most decentralized player.
Yeah,
Uh,
just going to say
it,
that's obviously very important, and you would think it should happen at least in the longer term, but the road to kind of get to that point, hopefully, yeah, decentralization wins out.
and at the same time, we're seeing some fight from the OG stables. You know, DAI is moving forward with their increase of the DAI stability rate all the way to 3.25%, which is higher than the Aave USDC borrow APY. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see how these other stables are able to compete once DAI is essentially just a wrapper for US Treasuries. Is that the most decentralized thing? Not really. Is it an effective way to scale a stablecoin for the global ecosystem? Maybe.
I haven't I have to say I haven't listened to it yet, but I assume that you probably touch on some of these topics in a recent podcast that's just been
Oh,
released.
but before we just jump into that one, while we're talking about stablecoins and MakerDAO, Spark is sort of a spin-off protocol that's launching from MakerDAO, and rETH is going to be enabled from the get-go there with a pretty substantial debt cap. So you will be able to borrow DAI from there uh, at lower APRs, and yeah, and just another major way the MakerDAO ecosystem and the Rocket Pool ecosystem are taking off together. I believe it's a 20 mil debt ceiling, which is a 15 mil increase.
Yeah, that's quite a lot. Being
Yeah,
raised from 5 million to 20 million. Yeah,
we in the IMC are keeping an eye out for the size of leverage in the market and relative to liquidity. We had a pretty lovely chat with some of the MakerDAO risk team in trading, of course. Where else would we be chatting? Uh, and so they are also aware, and they think our liquidity is pretty safe, and we also are just keeping a close eye, and things are trending fine for the time being. There was no issue in liquidity in this market crunch that we just experienced, so that itself was a good sign.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see how quickly that 20 million is used up. If you recall a little while ago, the cap on Maker was hit relatively quickly after, I believe, kind of a throwaway comment again in trading about the fact that what was it tracking at? Maybe just a few million. And there was quite a lot of space in there to mint DAI, and all of a sudden it seemed overnight someone caught on and used it all up. So I wonder if Spark is going to go the same way.
I have a sneaking suspicion it will. It seems we've attracted the attention of some MakerDAO enthusiasts.
So that's good to see.
But yeah, so what you were alluding to just a moment ago is I was featured for thankfully on a podcast recently with Rex, who also goes by Solomon Crypto on Twitter. He's also a host on the Leviathan News podcast, and is an all-around great educational resource. He was interested in my experience in Rocket Pool, the principles that brought me here, sort of what we have envisioned in DeFi. But then also we talked about my future decision to go to med school as opposed to do a full-time crypto career. So if you are interested in any of these topics, this is a great interview. It felt like talking with a friend. And if you have seen my previous interview with Whack Whack Attack, this is almost like a nice continuation of topics that were touched on there, including Buddhism, deep philosophy, and also just reflections on things I've seen in crypto since roughly 2015.
Sounds like a pretty full-on chat, I have to say. How long does it run for?
Just over an hour. Solid crypto podcast standard.
Oh, yeah, good stuff. And speaking of calls and podcasts and the like, I did mention this on the previous community call, but we are getting a POAP or POAP initiative for the Rocket Pool community calls. So if you are a collector, this is kind of your second heads up that eventually we will be implementing this. The goal is from the call next week. So you will have to tune in to the Twitter space to be eligible. So yeah, if you're listening to this either live or on YouTube, you may want to keep an eye out for this Twitter space next week and tune in. Just a heads up there.
Having a POAP for these calls was an initiative we wanted to have way back when the Twitter Spaces just started. So pretty happy to see that rearing its head back around. We in the Rocket Pool community are definitely POAP enthusiasts. Speaking of POAP collecting, if you are a POAP collector and a node operator, well, some lovely people within the Rocket Pool PDAO, including the lovely listeners to this call currently, shout out Dondo Schifrin, who I believe were directly worked on this. You can get a POAP by switching from a majority execution client to a minority one. So if you are running Geth and you switch to Besu or Nethermind, there will be not one, but I think 3 POAPs up for grabs, all gorgeous, and I believe only 2 of the designs have been released yet so far.
Yeah, was it just recently, overnight perhaps, that the second design by Dr. Doofus was revealed? And it is a beautiful design, that's for sure. You can check it out on the website, which is rplclientdiversity.com.
Big shout out to everyone involved in getting this done. You can also see, I believe, on the website that there have been some 30 node operators already that have migrated. And given that Rocket Pool actually does account for a decent chunk of the total number of node operators on the network, every little bit matters. So this is a great movement for the overall health of the beacon chain, and really proud of the community for pursuing it.
Yeah, and the prize pool is getting up there as well. Looks like there
Oh,
is,
right, the raffle.
yeah, 63 plus RPL, along with some other NFTs, a bit of ETH and rETH and all of that. So yeah, not only are you helping out Ethereum as a whole, but you never know, you might get lucky with this prize pool.
Some of my first RPL was given to me through POAP raffles. I think it's a great way to get involved with the community. So if you are a node operator, try to win yourself some RPL. Get yourself a collateral for a new mini pool.
And this initiative, I believe, runs to the end of the month, the end of June. So it's still a little bit of time, but don't leave it too long.
This isn't the only RPL related raffle going on in our community. Black Whack Attack is prepping for his 200th episode celebration. I believe it will be this coming week, and there will be a raffle including RPL, ETH, and NFTs, very similar to the RPL Client Diversity prize pool. But I mean, what else would you want? RPL, ETH, and some funny meme NFTs along the way.
Sounds like a perfect combination to me.
Yeah, and in order to participate in Wax Raffle, you simply had to have submitted some content for Rocket Fuel in the Rocket Fuel submissions thread on the Discord in the past several months since he has started Rocket Fuel. Essentially, the system, the way it works is if you submit content that makes it onto the podcast, then you have earned yourself a POAP for that month. And you only need one POAP to enter the raffle. So all the contributors to Rocket Fuel are getting a nice little reward now from this raffle, on top of the regular raffles that happen every month for contribution. So big shout out to Black for this great effort.
Okay, I think we have a few more DeFi topics to go through. One thing that just happened only a few hours ago, actually, was our friends over at Index Coop. They had a governance proposal out to create an ICRETH token, and it looks like that successfully passed. So we may see essentially an rETH version of their ICETH token being released. And that will give people potentially a more straightforward way to be exposed to the slightly more degen world of leverage liquid staking. But yeah, just another example of increased utility and integration of rETH into the world of DeFi.
Yeah, their Index Coop's original leverage token was ICETH or ICETH. This token, sort of infamous originally, because it was launched well before withdrawals, even before the Three Arrows Capital collapse, and thus it ended up causing quite a few retail holders to get liquidated. So just because it's a passive token that you're holding does not mean you are safe from liquidations. Fortunately, in the current environment, liquidations are somewhat harder to happen, given that there's much higher confidence in the peg, given that ETH can now be withdrawn from the beacon chain. However, that being said, it is entirely possible for Avi or a similar type of exploiter to find their way into the markets and find an opportunity to liquidate everyone at their own positive EV outcome. Liquidation hunting is sort of the nature of DeFi, given that everything's public and out in the open, and everyone's uh, liquidation thresholds are essentially public. So while the index coops version of leveraged rETH is going to be hopefully great for rETH growth in the future, I caution users to make sure you know what you're dealing with. Leverage is an easy way to lose everything if you are not careful.
Yeah, there's usually no free lunch. The risk reward trade off exists everywhere, including, and I suppose you could say, especially in the world of crypto and DeFi.
That being said, Index Coop are looking for seeds or initial backers for the token. So if you are interested in this type of product, reach out to Index Coop for some white glove service. Another major,
Yeah,
yeah, another major integration or relevant piece of news for our integrations is that Aura Finance has had to migrate their old liquidity to a new pool. This does affect our ETH depositors. So if you are using the rETH Aura pool, earning a cool, juicy, I believe around 6% APR, it is highly recommended or pretty much essential that you migrate your liquidity to the new pool to continue earning rewards. This migration was part of, I believe, both a security and overall efficiency improvement by the Aura and Balancer teams. On the back of this, there has also been a fairly substantial boost on certain Aura pools in the RPL ecosystem. Namely, the rETH boosted USD pool saw a substantial increase of approximately 4x the previous week's APR. It seems this has been from the balancer teams themselves as they continue to push their uh, uh, boosted USD pool, which is essentially just looping through their own system, and they want to benefit their partnerships that they've built with Rocket Pool. So we're happy to see this ecosystem continue to grow mutually beneficially. The other day, their boosted USD stablecoin saw $100 million in daily volume. So it seems like the flywheel is spinning quite well.
nice. And that is not the end of um, the DeFi news.
No, there. It feels like we do a bi-weekly update, this every 2 week cadence, but really DeFi could have its own weekly update section. There is quite a bit still coming in our ETH world.
Yeah, I might be skipping ahead a little bit, but a common thread with index coops, ICREs, and its link to Aave is Morpho, which is live
Exactly.
now, or at the very least, oh,
Yes.
great.
Yes. So Morpho Finance is a peer-to-peer lending aggregator, meaning it will match borrowers with the best rates, whether it's on Aave, Compound, or through their own peer to internal liquidity pool. The benefit of this is that depending on market conditions, you can get loans for cheaper than the Aave borrow rate. This is important because the major dynamic of leverage staking is a quote unquote rate arbitrage. You take the liquid staking tokens yield, subtract the borrow cost of ETH, and multiply by leverage. And in a very, very ballpark way, that is your yield. So intuitively, if the borrow cost is greater than the liquid staking token yield, the whole dynamic falls apart. So it's crucial that the borrow cost be as low as possible. Morpho, being an aggregator and optimizer, is one of the best ways to do this. It is currently the third largest holder of wrapped ETH in the ecosystem, I believe, after MakerDAO and Aave. So getting this live really is setting the stage for the future market conditions getting a bit more optimistic. At the moment, our ETH APR has been a bit deflated due to just monumental monthly growth, with approximately a quarter of all of our validators stuck in the queue.
And you mentioned something about Compound. You may have spotted on Twitter that I actually joined the Compound Developer Community Call that was a couple of days ago.
Oh, did not notice that. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, just a brief appearance. It was a pretty packed call, but maybe a sign of things to come, perhaps, in terms of rETH and its ability to use within Compound, which obviously then can be accessed through Morpho. So, yeah, definitely starting to hit these kind of network effects within the world of DeFi.
Yeah, and then all of that gets packaged by Index Coop at the top layer. It's a pretty crazy system. As far as I understand it, we actually do have all of the requirements to get a compound listing. We just have to get through the governance process. The last hurdle that we had to unlock, that we did unlock, was the Chainlink Oracle, but that is now complete, and yeah, should hopefully just be a process of going through governance.
Watch this space.
In yet more DeFi news, Arbitrum recently, sorry, Aave on Arbitrum recently allowed rETH for I believe, E-mode use on Arbitrum. Either E-mode or just general leverage was just enabled. Getting L2 leverage, sorry, getting L2 liquidity markets, credit markets for rETH is a growing goal of the IMC, and with the current liquidity on Arbitrum and Optimism being in a fairly strong place, this is definitely an area we can expand in.
Yeah, gas might not be too bad right now at, let's see, 16, but we have had recent experiences of what it can get to, and it won't take much in the way of a rebound of activity on the chain for even people who are pretty comfortable with mainnet right now, perhaps looking to move across to an L2 for those benefits of cheaper transactions. So good to be prepared for what will almost certainly come around at some point. And then at the same time, if you're a heavy DeFi user on mainnet, it may not be a bad idea to start looking at L2 options, see what's available, just to kind of build up that knowledge and prepare. It's not necessarily quite as straightforward, with potentially some bridging involved, but for a lot of people, the benefits may outweigh that. And actually, speaking of bridges, we were actually supposed to have a guest from Hop Protocol on this week to chat about some new functionality that they've enabled. So we will be aiming to get them back on soon. I think the announcement from Hop was a week or two ago, so it'd be good to cover that on while it's relatively fresh news. But that will make Rocket Pool Liquid Stakers give them another option, and one that seems to be a pretty good one in terms of moving between mainnet and some popular L2 options.
Yeah, so this Hop integration for rETH is pretty interesting in that it's the first liquid staking token to be on a fast bridge. So rETH was already available on Arbitrum and Optimism. The problem was bringing it back from L2 to L1 required a 1 week period, unless you wanted to swap your rETH for ETH and then bridge your ETH and then swap back to rETH. That process, in many people's views, might be a taxable event, or it's just generally kind of annoying to do. It's just twice the number of steps. So with Hop, you can just go and bridge your rETH uh, natively without having to go through that swap. In a technical sense, there is still a swap. Ultimately, every transaction in crypto is kind of a swap. So this is not obviously not tax advice, and don't use it as such. However, it is the first and currently only bridge that allows you to move liquid staking tokens near instantly between chains. This is going to be crucial for maintaining pegs across each of the chains, uh, which just brings greater UX as we expand our ecosystems. It also provides a pretty interesting yield source for people who have rETH. If you want to try to get a little bit higher yield, you can use your rETH in the hop pool to get some swap fees, as well as some RPL incentives that we from the IMC are providing. Due to the nature of the pool, you retain 100% staking yield while still getting staking fees and RPL incentives. So it's pretty beautiful for the yield hungry.
Sounds pretty good.
Big shout out as well to Dipsy and Superfizz, who were early advocates from the Hop ecosystem.
And Dipsy is now the what's the term they use? Is it ambassador or something? Or
I believe
liaison?
it's
Yeah.
Ambassador, yeah.
Kind of. I was going to say, yeah, I'll say it. Bridging the gap between the hop and and the rocket pool ecosystems and communities.
In a different area of DeFi, on perhaps the more experimental side of things, Eigenlayer has finally had their long-awaited mainnet launch. Uh, as part of their launch, they allow for the restaking of LSTs, including rETH. Uh, rETH had I believe, 3,200 cap, which was hit within a number of hours, very quickly, uh, therefore disallowing any new people from joining. However, fret not, as there is not really much to do yet on Eigenlayer. You can deposit your rETH, stETH, or CBETH, but there's not really any functionality beyond that. You also cannot use rocket pool mini pools inside of Eigenlayer. You can start pods using solo validators. However, there also currently is not much of a use there yet. However, that being said, it is pretty awesome to see the rETH cap get hit so fast.
Definitely some good interest there, but yeah, I'm kind of torn between, on the one hand, um, thinking they managed to launch mainnet very quickly, which was quite impressive. Then, on the other hand, wondering how long until there's an option to do something over there. But again, just I guess goes to show the amount of interest around liquid staking. It is more than just a narrative that appears for a month or two and disappears. We're coming up to halfway through 2023, and it seems to be only growing ever stronger.
Yeah, some theoretical applications that could be built on Eigenlayer include sovereign rollups, uh, uh, de decentralized sequencers for fraud proofs, and I actually just saw a proposal yesterday for enabling Cosmos IBC with Ethereum, so allowing Cosmos chains to rent security from Ethereum nodes. So the design space and research around the application is interesting. It just has not come into any practical utility yet, though I hope it does. In another uh, sort of cross chain ecosystem world, Bouncer on ZK EVM, the Polygon ZK EVM has had some incentives applied to it on the recently launched rETH pool. So the Polygon team has taken it upon themselves to build the rETH oracle that is needed to port over the proper ratio from the ODAO, as well as seed some initial um, TVL for the pool to get it set up with some incentives. Big shout out to the Balancer team and the Polygon team for helping expand rETH across the ecosystem to new uh, groups of people. Polygon ZK EVM is special in that it is the second ZK EVM to you have rETH on it. ZK Sync era was the first, which got a ton of press coverage. However, there are not many things to be done with rETH on ZK Sync yet. However, keep your eyes open on the space. The IMC is very aligned with rollups that are themselves aligned with Ethereum, and ZK EVMs that try to replicate the EVM as close as possible are definitely showing how aligned they are with Ethereum. So they might be awarded in that.
If you have been hanging out in the Discord, you may have seen there is certainly some attention from protocols in the ZK Sync era world who have reached out to potentially discuss integrating and collaborating with Rocket Pool and rETH. So yeah, it could just be a matter of time until we see some more activity over there. In short,
It's pretty
can
fun.
the IMC do something, I guess?
Yeah. Uh, it's pretty funny. A few years ago, when optimistic rollups were coming out, and ZK Sync 1 was coming out, we people in the community were thinking, "Oh no, optimistic rollups got beat out. ZK Sync's already here." But turns out getting a ZK rollup is not so difficult, but getting a fully fledged ZK EVM is just a whole nother beast, and it's really astounding what uh, these protocols have managed to get out. And if we can get rETH growing right from the get go, there, I think it bodes very well into the future of Ethereum.
It certainly does sound like a pretty technical space. I recall on one of the stand-ups probably a couple of weeks ago, Kane and some of the guys were chatting about the technology. I understood a little bit of it, but it does sound like it is a bit of a step up in terms of the technical side of things. Um,
Then there's also Scroll ZK EVM, and then soon to be released Kakarot ZK EVM. Uh, I think Consensus is working on a ZK EVM too. So it'll much like there were many flavors of optimistic rollups. I think there will be many flavors of ZK EVMs as well, which means we in the IMC will have to be tasked somewhat with figuring out where our liquidity should be optimally placed. And we will rely somewhat on the community feedback on figuring that out. Uh, whereas where our community is most active is going to be a significant impact on where we end up building our liquidity.
yeah, I don't think we should be surprised if that does eventuate, and we do see lots of different flavors in the ZK world too. It certainly is playing out, as you've said, in other parts of crypto, even looping back to our first topic of discussion about the number of stable coins backed by liquid staking tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly shouldn't be a surprise to anyone to see a new innovation crop up and for there to be lots of different variations there. And I guess also just highlights again the importance of making sure you're aware of kind of what you're interacting with, and just like stable coins and L2s, not necessarily all created equal. But yeah, great to see that there is a ton of innovation happening, and it seems whatever part of the wider crypto world is is getting busy, there is a link back to liquid staking.
And there was this one post that went, the winning use cases of crypto so far have been non-sovereign store of value, stable coins, and potentially now liquid staking. And I think that's pretty true. You know, we saw the majors being the first huge multi-cap coins, then stable coins ended up being into the hundreds of or tens of billions, near hundreds of billions in value. It seems pretty likely that liquid staking ends up pushing just as high in valuation. It'll be pretty cool to see where Rocket Pool ends in all that. I want to give a quick shout out to Schifrin for being elected to uh, the GMC uh, coordinator role. This role was sort of needed given that the GMC is a relatively massive undertaking to essentially staff and coordinate the entire PDAO. As such, the role needs someone to take the helm and build out in the entirety of the foundations and build some protocolization uh, into into the whole mess, essentially. So good luck to Schifrin as they undertake this project. Uh, and I hope they are able to build the best GMC that we can get.
Yeah, good luck because from what I've seen from the outside, it is a big role, and I feel like as as the wider rocket pool ecosystem continues to grow, there'll potentially be more and more applications to the GMC. So, if anything, it's probably a role that will only get busier over time. But again, a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, definitely. Uh, we we have a DAO that are full of people who want to contribute, which is much better than having a DAO full of money with no one who wants to contribute, and that gets just pilfered. So it seems like we are in a very well positioned state. Another action from the DAO recently has been sort of this self-led outreach to other DAOs to try to get them to stake their ETH in a diversified fashion instead of just going all in on Lido's ETH. Some major targets were Aragon DAO, uh, Gnosis DAO, uh, and some others, with Aragon DAO being a pretty major victory, with them reallocating 20% that was initially going to be Lido towards Rocket Pool. Aragon DAO is uh, an on-chain voting DAO, so they enable protocols to execute proposals and smart contract upgrades in a decentralized fashion. They also did a token swap with Lido some time ago, which was cited as a reason on their end for wanting to do 100% in Steep. However, it was pointed out that it is just from both a business perspective and Ethereum health perspective, much more rational to diversify their stake. Uh, so this is an area to keep your eye on, seeing other DAOs and how they end up staking. If you know DAOs that are looking to stake or have a large ETH treasury, let us know, and we might reach out to them to see if they want to stake with Rocket Pool.
It does seem to be a bit of a trend, even just within individual wallets, right? That there is a diversification push going on. People see the benefits of splitting out their holdings across a couple of different assets. So, yeah, I'm sure that will only continue.
Yeah, I mean, we just 10 minutes ago we had a 720 ETH deposit. The deposit pool is continuing to churn, and the protocol is continuing to grow. Great to see.
Yeah, we just need that pesky beacon chain queue to go down. I was told that there was going to be a ton of withdrawals, so if that could happen anytime soon, that would be great. So our node operators,
You know, Coinbase has been keeping the execute pretty busy. Um, the CB ETH token has managed to continue to trade at the occasional 0.2 to 0.4% discount, wherein it is then quickly bought up and sent to the burn address, it appears. So there's this cycle going on where CVE loses peg and gets sent to the burn, and slowly is draining Coinbase's stake, but at the same time, they are still one of the leading depositors. So annoyingly, they're filling up both queues.
yeah, I wonder who could have predicted this, at least the first part.
uh, Back in my thesis last year, I did predict one of the major sources of rETH growth would come from a large chunk of Coinbase's stake getting burned away because of this arbitrage process. Essentially, once you have CBETH on chain, you're going to quickly realize that there are just a way better uh, assets to hold, whether from a decentralization perspective or from a pure yield perspective. As a result, these people are just going to sell the CBETH and cause the gradual buildup of a DPEG, which is only then corrected when someone comes along and burns that CBETH. So this is just a naturally progressing flywheel of tailwinds towards rETH, and it's pretty awesome to see play out.
Well, we're not quite at an hour, but we do have the bi-weekly coming out in just a few days, so um, perhaps we can leave some of the non-DeFi integration related topics for that call next week. And after all, without a guest on this call, and we have pretty much just been talking solid about Rocket Pool for, I guess we can round it up to almost an hour. I probably have to jump off
Yeah,
anyway to have our team stand up, but maybe we can continue the discussion in Discord and the Chit Chat channel. I know there are a few other interesting topics floating around out there. It looks like BlackRock's been doing something with an ETF, and
oh yeah,
yeah.
BlackRock's buying the bottom.
um,
When is BlackRock going to have a staked ETF, staked ETH
I mean,
ETF?
it's going to happen, right?
One day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to a finance pro friend of mine yesterday. I was explaining rETH, and he was like, "This is literally just a bond." The old ecosystem will catch up, and when they do, staked ETH is going to stand out. We're just a little ahead of the curve. But yeah, this kind of conversation, if you are interested, okay, we can definitely keep it going in the chit chat.
And I'll pop back in after our team call, and we can discuss further then. But until that point, thank you for tuning in to a slightly shorter version of a community call this week. Hopefully, from next week, we can return to our kind of regular schedule of days and times. But of course, regardless of the day or time, there will always be a recording uploaded to YouTube, and I'll get onto that later today. One final reminder of the community call POAP initiative, which will be starting for anyone who tunes in to the Twitter space. So you may want to keep an eye out for the call from next week and going forwards if you would like to build up your collection. Thanks to Jasper for coming along to co-host and chat DeFi, and thanks to everyone in the audience. We will see you soon.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.